Hello, fam. We've got both coaches here today. Coach Tanasia and I, Limitless Living's health and fitness coach, in case you forgot, have not done an episode together in, I think it's been multiple years.
Yeah, I think it's been quite some time. I didn't even realize you were at 35 episodes.
Yeah. We slow and steady progress wins the race around here. But yeah, I find it pretty unacceptable now looking in hindsight that we haven't both come on here in so long. But good news, we're going to be doing this every month. We're going to be recording an episode together about, where life and health and fitness all coincides in different ways. And I'm really excited to talk today because we're talking about growth and mental health and the stuff that doesn't always make it into the mainstream content. So let's be real. Let's like break it down and talk about growth and everything that comes with it and how it really tries our mental health sometimes.
Yeah, it's gonna be raw. So I feel like this is gonna be the unhighlighted version because Instagram's the highlight.
Exactly. Like what's behind the highlight reel? Because everyone likes to share the milestones, and this is stuff that we do, of course, as
hmm
well, because it's, look at where I've come from and the things that I've done, how I've done it so that we can serve and help other people. But there's a lot of stuff that falls beneath the cracks. And for me, I think just to be blatant about it, like there is a shadow side to growth, and it does shake up the mental health sometimes. It does not always feel good. It's very glorified,
hmm
but it's also very hard. So I know that our experiences with this, of course, are different because we're different humans.
Yeah.
When I talk about that, what comes up for you?
I feel like the first thing that kind of pops up is how we talk about growth not being linear, but I don't think anyone who starts off in their journey really understands what it truly means to not be linear. Because for me, experiencing it, it's like more of hills in a valley where it's like you hit one layer, then it goes down. And then you hit one layer and it goes down, and your mindset is constantly just trying to revert you back to that like first initial place that you had ever started at. Because like if you think about it, what I started mine at 25. So that's 25 years of always believing and thinking in that way. So when you start your growth journeys or even just like your own self-development journey, fitness journey, whatever kind of journey you start, it's just hills and valleys instead of just this straight line. But we just say growth isn't linear. And it's like, what does that actually mean?
Hmm. Like actually making that visual make sense, which I'm really glad you started with this because I actually had this realization. I don't remember if I shared it with you. I think I might have, but we had the first ever retreat, Limitless
Mm-hmm.
Leaders Retreat that we were both on, and the end of October. It is now the beginning of December. So it's been like almost 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And this is such a good example of like a peak followed
Mm-hmm.
by like a drop off.
Yeah.
And as much as we try and prevent that, and even now, like we all talked about it at the retreat, upper limiting is real and we can't anticipate self-sabotage coming and
Mm-hmm.
like us, finding ways to kind of plummet in one way or another. And for me, I was so aware of this and still, I have been using, did I tell you this?
I don't think so, but I think I've just been experiencing it. So I'm like giggling because I'm like, I feel like I know it's coming.
Yes. So my example is so specific. I have been using a passion planner. It's really hard for me to stay organized. I'm not a super scheduled, organized person, as Tanasia knows. And I have been using a passion planner for years. And to have like just the way it's set up, I just love it so much.
Yeah.
And this really serves me. For the month of November, I did not use it once, which was a very busy month for me. And once I like went to go pull it out this weekend to schedule this week, and I couldn't even find it. And I had put it in a drawer for what reason I don't remember, honestly. And I took it out and I was like, oh my gosh, there it is right there. Like that's how subtle
Mm.
self-sabotage can be because it really did kind of derail me. I'm sure that's part of what derailed me through the month of November.
That's funny that you even said that because no, I did not know that that was going to be the reason. But if you look at my passion planner, because I also use one, this is not sponsored by the way, but passion planner, if you want to send our listeners some free planners, I mean, go ahead. I recommend it to everyone. Mine's actually, I went to look at my desk because it's always sitting here. I recently did start using Google Calendar, so I feel like my reason might be slightly different. But I love just the visual representation. It like sits on my desk, and visuals are really big for me. So I always have my passion planner and I always plan out my weeks. It's something that I preach to my clients. Like I said, I recommend those planners as well. And I have not written in it. And I guarantee you I can pull it out right now because I know where it is, but it's not on my desk. And I haven't used it in probably the same amount of time. And I didn't even know I didn't even know, honestly.
That is
That's wrong.
hilarious. That
Some
is, but
little
it's,
things.
I know it's crazy, but it's so normal, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's just, it's like that rubber band thing when
Mm-hmm.
you really, really have a new high, you're going to snap back, but then you're going to come back. But then, like, your new standard is still going to raise, like, I feel like I'm through that.
Mm-hmm.
I did kind of hit some kind of bottom after that because our experience was just so transcendent.
Mm.
And so then it came back, and it is the, like you're saying, the ups and downs and the volatility of the growth, but knowing that if you were looking at a graph, like we talk about, like this is where the more traditional growth is not linear visual comes in. It's up and down, but over years, over time, it's still trending up.
Up. Yeah. Yeah. And same visual I paint for my fitness clients when it comes to weight. So if anybody's here that's listening for like health and fitness, it also just same thing, up and down, but it's always trending down. So towards your goals. And it's so freaking hard to like scale out. And I know as coaches, like that's our job to like take our clients' visuals and scale them out and say, like, let's step 10 blocks away from the building that we're looking at and like really see what the facts are and how much progress you've made and where your growth has taken you. And then it's like when you're looking back at the building, you're like, holy shit. But when you're standing in front of it, looking right up at it, you have to like break your neck to really be able to see everything that you've accomplished. And I think that's probably one of the most difficult parts of looking at this scale or this graph and really truly seeing that it's not linear, because all we see is this one like little tiny box where it's like we went up and then we went down, and it's like holy shit, and it just scares us back into the old habits. Why?
Mm,
Why does it even bring us back to that place of what we were doing before wasn't working?
hmm
Cool.
So what does that look like for you? Like what kind of stuff in mindsets in particular live in the ebbs and flows of that?
Oh, my ebbs live in the mindset that no progress has been made. And I think you and I talk a lot about this on our meetings too, of when we unlock this new layer of growth, sometimes they can replicate and look really similar to ones that we thought that we got over. And so, say, for example, I'll use fitness because that's what you and I have been talking about recently, where I had a really successful beginning of my fitness journey when I had hired you as a coach. And I went into a period of maintenance for myself, just for my mental health, lowering my blood pressure. Like my goals had changed, and you have to learn to be adaptable to your goals in order to continue to achieve them and not feel like you fell off and fell back on. But I was at a point recently, just like mentally, where I was like, I'm back in the same body that I was before I hired you. My rational brain knows that that's not the case. But when you're in this ebb for whatever reason, it's like so easy to convince yourself that you've made no progress at all when, again, the graph is trending up. I'm just in this new layer of my fitness journey, and I've actually still made so much progress from there. So I feel like in terms of business, entrepreneurship, overall just like personal life and lifestyle as well, like it's just so easy to get in the mindset of looking like you've made no progress at all because some of what you're going through is similar to what you felt like you had already accomplished.
Hmm. That's interesting. So it's kind of like I've already been here before. I should be past this point, and then it sounds like, which I say sounds like, but I'm like, oh no, I know this feeling
Yeah.
of shaming yourself at that point. Like you should be further ahead. You
Mhm.
should have already conquered this. Like,
Yeah.
why are we still here?
Yeah. And then you feel like you've never actually made the progress at all because you're like, oh shit, I'm actually still here. When we know as coaches, either that ebb or, you know, what mindset that's coming up is actually a little bit more deeper rooted. And we've just like scratched the surface level the first time, it comes back. Now we're a little bit deeper. Then we'll move past it, go to the next mindset or barrier that pops up, work through that. But then that second one might come back again because it's even more deeper rooted. So it's like weeds almost. Like not all weeds, when you get rid of them, they do come back sometimes. And if they are coming back and they're one of those more stubborn pests, then like you're going to the root of it, right? So I feel like sometimes it just takes us a little while to get to like the root. I also think of it like waxing. I'm loving these visuals right now. Like if you think of waxing, hair does grow back if you're not ripping it out at the follicle. And that does not always happen the first time, or else there would not be many people like in the world who service waxing, because if they did one Brazilian wax, people would never come back, you know? So it's like, how do we get to the follicle?
Yes.
And how do
I
we
mean,
get
exactly. And that's what we do with our clients that sets us apart, is like get to the root. And that's what we're all always working on, or that's what I guess we should always be working on, because I love those visuals. And I'm picturing like the weeds in the garden where the first time you see it, you know, rip it out and walk away and you think it's done. And then it comes back and you're like, oh, there's more. And then it happens multiple times until you get down on your hands and knees and you get a little tool and you dig down to the root and you like dig up a whole hole maybe, and maybe it looks like ugly for a
Yep.
minute, or you have to like fill it in with dirt. And that's what it takes, you know,
Yeah.
but eventually with repetition and with getting to the root, you won't be struggling with the same things. However, like it's normal for
Mm-hmm.
that to happen for a while.
Oh my God, so much. And then I even feel like if we want to take that visual one step further, like even when you've gotten the root up, other weeds do like grow from that. So it might
Mm,
not be the same issue that you've uprooted, but maybe something kind of attached to that, or that was a byproduct of that same root, right? And so then you're coming in and now you're bringing the weed killer. And so maybe that's your habits, maybe that's your lifestyle, maybe that's your routines that you've put and developed in order to be able to maintain this extra growth while you're digging up those roots, right? So like that's where the maintenance of your everyday is going to be so freaking important, even when it doesn't feel like it's doing anything. Because man, do I have days where I'm like, I'm doing my routine and I'm sitting there in the morning where I'm like, I really don't want to do this. And I feel like it's doing nothing, but we do it anyway so that we're not constantly that stretched rubber band that's like snapping back and hurting our wrist.
so good. So good. And this visual, I'm going to keep it going because it wasn't long ago that I was in the backyard and the weeds were kind of like growing over our the pavement in the back. And it was, I hate it. I like a clean edge. And so I started pulling up the weeds and they just kept going. And I didn't realize how much of our grass was actually weeds. And it went
Mm.
on. And I mean, like yards of weeds just covering our yard. And Alex came out and I was like, do you realize that most of our grass is weeds? Like, how long has it been like this? And do we rip it all up at once and have like a bare yard? What is happening here? And that's just such a perfect example of how they're all threaded together. It's like this web, and you start pulling up, and it's just this giant web covering your yard. And you're like, holy shit, I'm going to be here for hours.
Dude, you said that. And the first thing that came to my mind is how many of us are watering our weeds thinking that it's grass?
Oh, I gasped. I gasped. That's how I feel about that question. Wow.
I gotta sit in that for like a moment because I feel like my whole body is like, oh my God, you guys are on something, because I know that we are. But how many people do that, right? Because we always, again, taking that analogy one step further, you always want to water your grass. You never want to compare and worry about if the grass is greener on the other side. But how many of us don't even realize that we are self-sabotaging our grass growth by watering weeds?
Damn. And you know what? You know what that's making me think of? Watering weeds is so often justifying your beliefs
Mm-hmm.
and sticking with your resistances, because
Yeah.
what you're resisting is typically what you need to do or face or walk through or try. And so like we're just justifying our
Yeah.
resistances and doing the confirmation bias thing. Oh man,
Right.
so good.
And most people don't realize. And that's why we know as coaches, it's our job to help them get to that root. But it can be a process, which is so normal. I think it's been for me personally such a process to be so resistant to seeing that I've even been watering weeds.
And that's the thing. And that's the thing that no one, ourselves included, of course, should be hard on themselves for, because we don't know what we don't know. And we've been on autopilot and we've been conditioned and we've seen these
Mm.
things that we never chose to see when we were young. We didn't choose our conditioning,
Yeah.
but we got it. And now we're on autopilot with it. And that is the power of partnering with someone who has an objective perspective, who can
Mm.
see the things that you can't see. And with grace and love, help you recognize those things and then change them in a way that serves you. That is literally the whole process that we live for.
Mm.
But we
Wow.
need each other. And that's just like outside of coaching, connection. We need
Yeah.
to talk about these things. We need to air it out. We need to have extra eyes from people, again, who love us, who are not judging us, who are
Mm.
not supporting us and judging ourselves.
Yeah. Right. We don't allow that behavior. We don't enable it. There are so many people, and I talk to my clients about this all the time too, who I actually wrote a post on this. Like, there can be people in your life that are enabling that weed growing behavior and you don't even realize it. And if they're enabling you, you're enabling it, and everyone's enabling it because you don't have like that third party perspective who's like, hey, I see this now. Like, let's work on you seeing this and figure out what's going to work for you, because obviously that's not it. Like, I always think of it as choosing your hard. I know that this is a really like common phrase that's used, but recently like I've been using it more and more to just kind of elicit a positive change and choice, and just reminding myself that I have a choice. Like, if you think of it, watering your weeds is hard. Ripping out all the weeds and watering your grass because you have no grass, so you got to start from scratch, is also hard. Like, they're both going to be equally hard. So wouldn't you choose the one that you know is going to reap rewards?
Yes, exactly. Because
Like,
let's say you want a garden in your backyard, and that's a little dream of yours to have a beautiful little garden or to grow herbs and fruits and veggies. That's not going to happen with weeds. So is
yeah,
that a sacrifice you're willing to make? Like, are you willing to sacrifice your dreams
exactly.
to not do the hard of pulling the weeds and all those things?
Yeah. And I feel like when we say hard, clients get scared. So if we're talking about like not the weed analogy, because I could go on for freaking ever when it comes to a visual, but like I feel like when we say the word hard, it adds a little bit of friction. People are like, oh, I don't want to be uncomfortable. I don't want to be hard. But like when I think back at before I ever started my journey with you, like hating myself felt hard. Like it felt like shit, right? Like hating my body felt hard. It felt like shit. Like having a negative mindset was hard. Not growing at the pace that I do now grow at. Yes, it's hard to keep it up and maintain it, but like it was hard not doing it and feeling like I was stuck in the same freaking place every single day for days on end. Like, we're not on this earth for very long, despite what anyone thinks. Like, it's not long at all. And it's like, don't be scared of hard or the word hard, or because it's going to be a little difficult or a little uncomfy, because what you're doing now feels hard already.
Exactly. Exactly. There are pains and problems in every single stage and situation in life. Even if you are living out every single one of your dreams, you're going to have pains and problems. But guess what? You'd probably choose those over the ones that you have now. So it's just, what are you willing to suffer for?
Mm-hmm.
And what are the kinds of suffering that you can learn to tolerate
Mm-hmm.
and enjoy? That is the question. It's in one of the books that I'm reading right now. And it's really been a huge shift for me mentally, to instead of focusing on like what you want, because we all generally kind of want the same things, right? Like, we want to make a lot of money and we
Yeah.
want to have time and mobility freedom and
Mm-hmm.
we want a nice big beautiful house, and a lot of us want a family. And it's like we can't really measure or plan our lives based on what we want, but what kind of suffering are we willing to tolerate and learn to enjoy? And
Mm-hmm.
that's really where people go in completely different directions.
Yeah. We've always talked about it being insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And I tell my clients all the time who feel like they're not consistent or not consistently working towards their goals, and I see this in a mindset as well, is you're already consistent, because you wouldn't be where you're at right now doing the same damn things if you weren't doing the same damn things every single day consistently. So you're just
Ooh.
doing the ones that are not aligned with your goals and your vision. So what would it look like to actually do the ones that are aligned with your goals and visions, right? Like consistency is not your problem. I see you consistently self-sabotaging every single day.
Ew, that's so true. That
You
is so
know?
good.
So just and it's not as easy. I hate using the word just, and I hate when other people say the word just because it's not just that easy. Like it doesn't just flip a switch or okay, now I'm gonna just consistently decide to be happy and have better mental health and have a better mindset. It doesn't work that way. But like again, scaling out, taking you across the street from the building instead of right in front of it, you're already consistent. Once you own the fact that you're already consistent, then it is easier to then shift what you're consistent in. But if we keep telling ourselves the narrative of I'm not consistent, I'm never going to be able to figure out how to track my macros. I'm never going to be able to come off my, mental health medications if that's something that, aligns with you. Like I'm never going to be able to make X amount of money a month or a year. Like if you decide that that's never going to happen, then it's never going to happen. But if you take ownership of it and decide like, no, okay, I am consistent. I can make X amount of money. I can travel 5 times out of the year, then you're just that one step closer for it to actually happening and coming into fruition.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good perspective shift is like stop saying you're not consistent because you are. You're just not consistent with the things that serve you. And
Yeah.
that's a much more attainable change
Yeah.
to make, right?
Yeah. People have to know and for themselves, like just like that social proof of like, oh wait, like this habit I can do, I've done it. I think we psych ourselves out thinking that it's again hard, like it's unattainable because all these bodybuilders are consistent and disciplined, and I look like this and I'm not consistent and disciplined. No, you are. Again, just with different things.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got the tool. Now we just got to make sure that the screw actually fits. Like,
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. So Tanasia and I talk a lot when we're together. I actually meant to like preface this with in the beginning of the episode, but we really have to keep ourselves reined in doing these podcasts now because you should see her and I when we get together a couple times a year now, and it's always the first night we are literally up until about 4 a.m. just
mhm,
talking because we are soul sisters truly. And I was like thinking of how I could like explain that word, and I feel like you just know if you know what I mean by
mm,
that. Like, it's the same thing. Like if you believe in soulmates and you find your person and you're like, this is just the person that I meant to be with, it's the same thing.
yeah.
And sisterly friendship way. And so I say all that to say we talk a lot and we could go on for 3 hours about everything.
Yeah.
But there's one thing that you kind of touched on that I wanted to come back to. I want to make sure we include in this episode because I've talked a lot with my clients about the hardest part of growth being the relationships and the way that they change and the way that you have to let people go and you have to grow in different directions
Yeah.
than people. And that's small note on growing in different directions. Um, I used to live in the narrative of like outgrowing people, and I've evolved into like we're just growing in different directions like tree branches, and that
Mm,
sometimes feels a lot better because the people that you love, like you're not above them and no one is above you ever. Like just because you are choosing different types of growth or you're growing faster doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with anyone else. You're just in different directions. And yet still like that is like I said the most painful part that I see in what all of our girls go through because a lot of times, and Tanita, you're a testament to this, it's
mhm.
your romantic relationship that gets cut or friendships or like your family dynamics change, and all of those things are highly emotionally charged by nature, which makes it painful.
Yeah. It's definitely uncomfortable. I can say that from firsthand experience because I don't think that anyone prepares you or talks about it unless you're working with a coach who's experienced it firsthand. I don't see anybody talk about it on Instagram. And
Hmm.
sometimes I'm even hesitant to talk about it on like in the fitness sense because I don't want to scare anybody into like, hey, you're gonna break up with your boyfriend or leave your marriage or have a completely different friend group or whatever the case is. Like I never want to scare anybody into that because everyone's journey is unique in their own. But I do think that it is really important to understand that there is a possibility to grow in different directions, being okay with that if that does happen to you and it is part of your journey, and then working with someone that understands that. Because how many coaches do we see have personal bias? As much as they try not to, it's hard as a coach to not, want the best for someone and be like, hey, don't do that, don't do this. Like, we've been there before. But just actually guide and support you in whatever decision you choose to make when you're growing in different directions, and just be able to point out how it may be limiting your own growth because you're just worried about growing at the same rate as everybody else around you. Changes are so important. I don't think that I would have been able to make the changes in my personal relationship and get to my level of growth had you firsthand as a coach tell me it's time to break up with your boyfriend.
Did
It's
I
time
say
to
that?
stop. No, I'm saying if you did do that, I probably would have been like, oh no, sis. Like, I was in my relationship for 5 years, and I had been friends with some of the people that I was friends with for like 10 to 15 years at that point. So if a coach came in and was just like, yeah, I don't know about that, you would be really freaking scared of what's coming because you would feel so lonely. And when you work with a coach who can guide and support you through those types of changes in your relationship, who can not have that biased opinion and really just like empower and uplift you to continue your growth journey despite some of those people growing in different directions. I feel like that is more rocket fuel for your goals. Like, it helps accelerate because you're like, okay, I can do this at my own pace. I was so resistant. I I think it took me a full year from when you noticed that I was unhappy in my relationship and it was hindering my growth before I actually like made the commitment to myself to end that relationship.
Your word choice is, for lack of a better word, funny there, because you said from when you noticed, which literally just means since Tanasia noticed. She was assuming that I noticed at that point. And I'm like, I don't remember when I noticed, and I definitely know I did not express it blatantly. And I guarantee you didn't write it down on the date of if I did. So you noticed
If
for
I go back in some of my journals, I might have something. That's something I have to do after the episode and see if I have it. We'll post it as like the thumbnail or something, because I remember us having a conversation around it. And this was around the time that we were having conversations around like living in a small town, because I'm also from a very small town, probably the same size. I think it's even smaller than St. Augustine. I think we talked about it. And we had conversations around small time friends, small time families, just where everybody knows everything about everyone, and how that was hindering my growth at the time. And then bring in that relationship. So I feel like we talked about it, but it wasn't the center focus. And it was more of just like a little seed that was planted of, why am I talking about this on my health and fitness journey with my coach when we're supposed to be, and not even supposed to. You see, I just use that word in that verbiage of, you're not supposed to talk about anything. In our containers here, it's free reign for everything and anything goes in this space, right? And that was where I took it on one of those calls. And I just remember, I don't remember the exact questions that you asked me, but I remember having that conversation. And I think we maybe had one or two more conversations after that, because people can tend to get really resistant when they share something that's a little bit vulnerable, like, hey, I'm not happy in my 5-year relationship. And then it just kind of brews in your head. And it's all that you can think about of like, what am I doing? It's like taking the rose colored glasses off. And you're like, can't unsee it now that it's said. And it's really uncomfortable. But I feel like it's also very freeing to allow those relationships to change and grow in different directions.
Yes, and allow people to be in your life for seasons and know and accept that that just is life, and that's okay. And you can either choose the bubble, or you can choose to evolve and to step out and to be uncomfortable and experience the adventures and the new kinds of love and connection that you're going to experience outside the bubble. And I use that word because like we've had similar experiences in like our small town. Like, I'm from two small towns. I lived until I was 16 in a rural farm town in PA, and then I lived in St. Augustine, Florida for 9 years, which is also a very small town where everyone knows everything about everyone. And there's a lot of complacency, just to be frank. Like in both places, there's a lot of stagnancy. And I, it was hard to shed people, places, and things. It's painful.
You
Like,
almost feel guilty.
yeah. And you also feel like, I don't know, the voices just get really loud, and what those people are thinking about you or saying about
Mhm.
you for a long time. And I would love to, like, maybe the last thing we touch on, Tanasia, I would love to hear, like, you're still friends with the people that you grew up with.
Mhm.
I am, like, from a very, like, far distance. Like, we just rarely talk, and I still have love for them. But it's at way more distance than I think what your friendships are. And I would
Yeah.
love to hear, like, what it's been like for you to grow in a different direction and maintain relationships with people that you love and care about.
So it was difficult in the beginning. If you know me, which some people listening probably don't know me all that well, is I care a lot. Like I am the definition of someone that like wears their heart on their sleeve and I want the best for everyone. So when I was going through this growth journey and going through all of these changes, for a long time, it felt like I was awake and everyone was sleeping. And I could see all of these areas where they were complacent and stagnant, like in their life, in their relationships, in their careers. And I was like so excited, like on this rocket to the freaking moon, where I just wanted to like shake everyone awake almost. And you can't do that, one, from their own resistances, limiting beliefs, or like own self sabotaging. And two, because some people don't even want that for themselves. So I couldn't want that more for them. And it was something that was really hard as someone who cares so freaking much to be able to say, I can't force you to get on this rocket ship with me. And all I can ask is that you support me on my journey to doing what I have to do that's necessary and also agreeing to disagree on certain stuff. So, hard to not want to drink alcohol, hard to say, I'm going to stay here and work instead of going out, or, being at a family function saying, hey, I'm going to go to bed at 9 o'clock, whatever it is, those are really small, minuscule examples. But I had to just be okay with being alone because I know that I wasn't truly alone because I have you, but it was more of I needed to be okay with feeling lonely in a place where you're supposed to have like friendship and family, and just knowing that hey, not everyone's going to understand me and what I'm doing right now, but it's you have to have conviction in order to be okay with that loneliness. Like what I was doing was too important to me to stay the same. It literally would have been insanity if I let other people dictate and enable self-sabotaging because they were okay where they were at and I just simply wasn't. And it's hard because I have had some people along the way. This is something that you and I have spoken about who weren't friends, but somehow were in situations where they were in my friend group for a minute, who have described me as being someone who thought that they were better than everyone else. And a lot of people will say a lot of really negative shit when you are growing at a different pace and capacity that they're not able to understand. And there are a lot of people who are friends and family members who will make it their life's mission to not understand you. And I decided that along the way, that was none of my business. I am a first generation American. So I know I don't talk about my culture a lot, but I am a first generation American. And it is really hard, especially coming from a family who are immigrants to this country. It's not easy. They're stuck in their ways. A lot of my friends are also first generation Americans and they're stuck in their parents' ways. And I had to decide that doesn't serve my goals. And you almost have to just put that bubble up and float in
Mm.
your bubble, knowing that you're going to find people along the way, just like I came across you in your container who just helped, keep that bubble a little bit tighter because it's hard. People are coming with needles everywhere. They're like, let me pop it. And for what? And now that I was able to kind of compartmentalize and say, like, this is what I have to do, and I'm not sorry about it. A lot of the people that I thought weren't going to get on the rocket ship have or are. in other ways. And I was just like, wow, all I had to do was give you the space and time to kind of come to that realization on your own. And when you do it for yourself, you inspire others. And those who are dedicated to not understanding you, they grow in a different direction.
Oh man, there's so many things that are coming up. I'm so glad you shared that. One, being resistant to change, like you used the word growth. If we really zoom out, like it is your growth, and it's also change is another word for it. And people don't respond well to change when it's someone that they really, really love and they've known as a certain version. And I'm gonna be vulnerable here and say that this happened with my younger sister, where she was on this side of like growth and change in her own unique way that me and my family didn't fully agree with. And she was like, I am happy. Why can't you be happy that I'm happy? And we like could not accept that she was changing because there was this version of her that we have loved. We had loved for 18, 19 years that was just different now. So there's like a grieving process for those around
Mm-hmm.
you and for you also to be evolving and changing. Parts of you have to die. And
Yeah.
in that process, like with these relationships, family and friends and romantic relationships, it is expected, not just normal, but expected for there to be a season of loneliness. Oh my gosh, when I left St. Augustine, Alex and I had both been there for 9 years, and we were like running out of there. So he found a job in Austin, Texas, which was like both of our like dream city to go to. And we got there and we were there for like 14 months. And I have never felt so lonely. And so like what is wrong with me that like I'm surrounded in a city that is like densely populated with people who are on similar paths as me, and I still can't connect. And like what is wrong with me? Like it was just a shitty feeling, but then you find your people. And now, like this past year, oh my gosh, I have never had such an abundance of love and connection in my life by people who make me better, and people like I get to be fully myself around and get to grow. And like, even if we're not the same, they support and like understand who I am and love me for who I am, even
Mm-hmm.
though we're so different. And so, like, I don't know, what comes up for you around that?
So I'm still in your Austin, Texas period where like we're still living in Jersey City. Hopefully, like within the next year, we'll be kind of out of it. And I'm able to make those unique connections now, through your container, like we said with the retreat. So connecting to women like that. But I'm still at a place where it is a little bit lonely. A lot of the communication is online whenever I do get to see you guys a couple of times a year. But I'm very hopeful in the fact that like what I have right now is enough for me. So I don't have to like make any abrupt changes until like the time is not necessarily right, because I don't want to say that. It's more of like we do have a timeline. Like we have things that are not allowing us to move forward just yet. But I know that when that's broken and we can go and my lease is up, I can definitely do that. I know that I'll find my people, but I think I have such contentment with myself right now that I don't need it right in this moment, because what I have right now is more than enough and that I'm going to find it. But I didn't always feel that way. This is going to be my third year in this apartment. And the first year was so hard. It was so freaking lonely. I was like, I'm in pretty much a mini New York City. There's millions of people here. And now going on 3 years, I've just started getting into Facebook groups and going out and finding all these new places and inviting people here, because for the longest time, my friends and family didn't even want to come here because traffic, it's so populated. There's so many people, all the things. And when you're so okay with like where you're at in your growth journey and you're okay with shedding all of those layers and people not kind of coming with you, you get okay with being patient for when those people are going to come into your life, because then they're just like added bonuses and they're meeting you where you're at instead of knowing this old version of you that they're trying to stick you to. Like they're not trying to compare you to who you were in high school, because babe, they don't know who you were in high school unless you choose to share it, which I rarely ever talk about high school. I rarely even talk about college, to be honest. Like I only really talk about who I am right now in this moment, because to me, that's the only version of me that exists and that is important.
Boom. That is such a mic drop. I feel like we should cut it there because I will get on my soapbox about how
I
I feel
know.
about moving. Like I said, we could keep going, but why don't we save that for another episode? But all I will say is if you want to move because you want a fresh start, don't let anyone tell you that you're running away from your problems because guess what? Whatever internal problems you have are going to come with you, but you know how much easier it is to do the work and to heal and grow when you are not in the same environment. Tanasia and I talk about this a lot. Like a lot of people are trying to bloom, they're trying to grow and bloom into flowers while they're in a dark closet. Go put yourself in the sunlight and see
Yeah.
how much easier it is. See how much more naturally the process, same process, but it happens so much easier and more
Mm-hmm.
naturally. So, Tanisha, it's really cool to hear where you're at, and I am so excited to like see what upcoming seasons bring for you when you get to go like put yourself in the sunlight before long. And I just can't, with how much you've grown and who you are now, I can't even imagine what that's going to look like. So, this
It's
was
exciting.
awesome.
This was good. I liked it. We could talk about this for freaking ever. I want to bring in one last plant analogy to kind of close out our garden because I don't think too many people know about snake plants, and I wish that I had it right here already, but I've got one on my windowsill who in the sunlight, a snake plant loves to be crowded and it literally will pop out babies. I'm not popping out babies, but they pop out babies next to them because they love to be crowded. So like they're in the sunlight and they create their own plants. And I've propagated and separated my snake plants before because now I've got two snake plants and they're both propagating and freaking making more snake plants in their tiny little pot. They don't care. They're overruling my windowsill right now because they're in the sunlight and someone is pouring into them and taking care of them. And so they're blooming. And so not that you have to go and have kids or anything like that to, fill your pot up, but it comes with time. If you're patient, your people
Mm.
propagate from you. Propagate from
Mm.
your inspiration, from your openness, from your vulnerability, from your willingness and openness to connect and play and be
Mm.
attracted to that shit, just like you're attracted to the sunlight. So go put yourself on the windowsill.
Go put yourself on the windowsill. Go put yourself in a conducive environment for your growth and see how quickly your people, like, see how quickly your circle expands in the most beautiful way. I love that. All right, we'll put a pin in it here, but we'll be back next month on a new topic. Thank you guys so much for listening. Tay, thank you for being here.
Okay, welcome. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk to you guys next month.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. All right, guys, thank you again for listening. If this podcast was insightful for you and it really served you, share it with someone that you love. That's all we ask. Spread the love. All right, we'll see you guys back here next time.